Waka waka. Every retro gaming fan should know that familiar sound. That sound that came from a cultural icon from the 1980s. No, I'm not talking about Fozzie Bear.
Waka waka.
I'm talking about Pac Man, or specifically Ms. Pac Man. Ms. Pac Man was the first arcade game designed with a female gamer in mind. Who is Crazy Otto, and what does he have to do with our story? Let's find out as we chomp into the history of Ms. Pac Man. The year is 1981 and Pac Man fever is running wild across the entire world. Doug McRae and Steve Golson were MIT students who had purchased a couple of arcade cabinets for their dormitory. These were very successful, earning up to $600 per week. They found out, though, the more people played, the longer they lasted per quarter due to them mastering the game. They decided to make an enhancement kit to make the game a bit more difficult. The first enhancement kit they did was Super Missile Attack, which was an add-on for Missile Command. The game was a big success, which sold 1,000 units at $250 a pop. So while in college, they made adjusted for inflation $670,000. They knew there was a future in this. Until Atari caught wind of it and took them to court for trademark infringement. However, they took their profits and created General Computer Corporation and started looking for the next big thing to expand their arcade business. Pac Man was front and center. They had liked the game but found the same shortcomings that affected Missile Command. Once you learned the patterns, you could essentially play forever. The things they wanted to improve upon were more mazes, truly random enemy patterns, and they also wanted to rework the character designs so they wouldn't be infringing on any trademarks. They ended up creating 4 unique mazes with 7 types of fruits. The dead spots, or places where you could hide forever in a maze, were eliminated completely. The monsters were given antennae, and the main character was given legs and blue eyes. His name? Crazy Otto. In late 1981, Time magazine was planning a story on the explosion of video games into our culture. They dispatched a photographer to scan the arcades to take pictures of the hottest games. They took a picture of Missile Command and also Pac Man. The problem is, though, it wasn't Pac Man. It was Crazy Otto. There were only 3 of these Crazy Otto cabinets in the world, and Time magazine managed to snap its picture. It was also improperly labeled as Pac Man. And that is the infamous story of how Pac Man with legs got started. They play tested it and it was a big success. As part of the settlement from Atari, they could not sell any unauthorized add-on kits without the manufacturer's permission. They decided to call the president of Midway to see if they could strike a deal to release Crazy Otto. The most successful arcade game of all time was also the most copied and bootlegged game of all time, and Midway was going through a number of lawsuits with other companies who were stealing their property. They flew to Chicago, and the executives at Midway were impressed, but they didn't want to release an add-on, but a full-blown sequel to Pac Man. After various input from Midway and a little bit from Namco, they felt the game was ready for release. The original title and theme was going to be Super Pac Man. After looking at the intermissions, though, they realized they had a love story. Boy meets girl, boy chases girl, finally they have a baby. They wanted to bring in the female crowd, so they decided to call her Pac Woman. They felt this didn't roll off the tongue easily enough, so they went with Miss Pac Man. Because of the third cutscene, where they have a baby, it was felt that they should be married, so the title again was changed to Mrs. Pac Man. And finally, Ms. Pac Man. The name of the ghost stayed the same this time around, except for Clyde, who was renamed Sue in honor of Doug McRae's sister. Everything that made Pac Man great, Miss Pac Man expands upon. We have 4 brand new mazes and 7 different types of floating fruit. For those of you who have been living under a rock for the last 35 years, the object of the game is to eat all the dots on the screen while avoiding the ghosts that are trying to get you. If you eat the power pillars, the tables are turned for a brief time so you can chase the ghosts and eat them instead. There are warp tunnels on each side of the screen which will transport you to the opposite side. If you clear all the dots, then it's on to the next screen. As I mentioned before, there are 3 cutscenes. The first one, Pac Man and Miss Pac Man meet. The second one, they chase each other. And the third one sees a small bundle of joy being delivered to the Pac couple. I guess I never heard of Pac contraceptives. Ms. Pac Man was an enormous success, outselling even the original Pac Man. This was due to appealing to both male and female gamers. 115,000 cabinets were sold, making it one of the most popular arcade games of all time. The merchandise went through the roof, with everything you could think of having the Ms. Pac Man brand slapped on it. Of course, the Pac Man family made its way to Saturday mornings on ABC in animated form. With a game as popular as Ms. Pac Man, you knew the conversions were a certainty. I counted over 40 conversions while doing my research for this video. If I were to show them all, it would be a 9-part video. However, we did receive another excellent 1983 commercial.
Hey Joey, what's she really like?
She's the most exciting woman I ever met.
Yeah?
Atari introduces the Woman of the Year, Ms. Pac Man. Just like the arcade classic, 4 different game screens, floating fruit, even pretzels.
Honey, don't you know I'm more than Pac Man with a bow?
Reach for Ms. Pac Man.
Reach for Atari.
Released under the Atari Soft label, the Apple II version gets us rolling with a really good version. The graphics are very close except for the putrid colors. It controls really well though, and the sound is decent. The DOS port is up next, and this version looks a little better than the Apple except for the dead, soulless eyes of the ghosts. The internal speaker sound is just grating though. The speed is just a little bit on the slow side. For the first time since I started doing these documentaries, I get to review a VIC-20 port. The VIC was the predecessor to the Commodore 64 for those of you who don't know. The graphics and playability are very good. The speed and animation are a bit too slow though, and the sound is very irritating. The Spectrum port is very well done, although the graphics look a bit squished. The speed seems to be just about right, and the playability is very good. The sound effects though? It sounds like when I'm trying to start my car in 25-degree below weather. The Atari 2600 version is fabulous, especially when compared to the original Pac Man conversion. All 4 stages are here, and the game plays very well. One of the better Atari 2600 conversions. Up next is the Atari Lynx version. They managed to keep everything on one screen without scrolling. So the graphics are even smaller than you would expect. The speed is a bit too slow, but it does play very well. The good old Commodore 64 triumphs again with another excellent arcade conversion. The speed, graphics, and playability are all very faithful to the arcade game. All of the little touches are there, as well as the ghost eyes roaming back to their home base after they are eaten. Very well done. A+. The Atari 5200 version looks pretty good, but again the speed is slightly off. Everything seems to be here, and even the music and sound are very well done. Even with the terrible 5200 controllers, the game plays pretty well. One of the things the developers have struggled with to get right is the speed. The Atari 7800 version feels like Ms. Pac Man when you're playing it. The speed is just right, and so is the playability. Graphics and sound are both very good. The original Game Boy got a conversion, and even with the screen scrolling to keep everything in view, it's really well done. The graphics, sound, and playability are near arcade perfect, only viewed as if it were broadcast on the Dumont network in the 1950s. The Texas Instruments computer even got a conversion, and graphically it looks very close to the arcade game. Playability is decent, but the sound is terrible, and the speed again is just a bit off. If you have a chance to play this, make sure you turn the volume all the way down. The Sega Master System didn't just do a straight up arcade conversion, they decided to improve upon it with better graphics and sounds. The game includes 4 sets of mazes and a Pac booster which speeds Ms. Pac Man up. These extra mazes are also available on the Genesis and Super Nintendo versions. The screen also scrolls to keep everything in view. It plays exactly like Ms. Pac Man, so you can't go wrong with this version. The NES version received not 1 but 2 conversions. The one we're taking a look at now is from Namco. Now you would think a big company like this would get something so small as the colors right, but apparently they just didn't think it was a big issue. The colors on all of the mazes are wrong. Not a big deal because it does play like the arcade game, and that's what counts. The sound is decent, but it does get on your nerves after a bit. The Sega Game Gear version more faithfully resembles the arcade game than his big brother, the Sega Master System. While the screen scrolls to keep everything in view, the animation is a bit too choppy. The speed is good, and it does play well. Released on the Namco Museum compilation for the Game Boy Advance, we get probably the most accurate port for a handheld machine that is not emulated. While the screen scrolls, everything else looks, sounds, and plays arcade perfect. The Super Nintendo version was given a slight graphical upgrade but looks really good. The playability is well done and the sound is arcade perfect. The second NES conversion was from Tengen, and it really outshines the version from Namco. The colors, graphics, and sounds are much better in this version, and the playability is nice and tight. Pac Man and Ms. Pac Man were a cultural phenomenon that had to be seen to be believed. There have been various spin-offs and sequels over the years, but in my opinion, nothing touches Ms. Pac Man. Pac Man is what started it all, but Ms. Pac Man is what perfected it. If you would like to support me, please visit my Patreon page listed below. Also, please like, share, and subscribe. It's the only way my channel can grow. Thank you for watching.